Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to call the Assembly Committee on Judiciary to order. Mr. Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Assemblywoman Bilbrey Axelrod. Assemblywoman Cohen.
Here.
Assemblywoman Gonzalez. Assemblywoman Hanson.
Here.
Assemblywoman Hardy.
Here.
Assemblywoman Kasama.
Here.
Assemblywoman Krasner.
Here.
Assemblywoman Marzola.
Here.
Assemblyman Miller.
Present.
Assemblywoman Nguyen.
Here.
Assemblyman O'Neill.
Here.
Assemblyman Orentlicker.
Here.
Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong.
Here.
Assemblyman Wheeler.
Here.
And Chairman Yeager.
Here. We do have a quorum for the moment. Could we mark Assemblywoman Bilbrey Axelrod and Assemblywoman Gonzalez absent excused? I do expect them to join us here shortly, and I'll try to make a note when they arrive. Again, that means we do have a quorum. I want to wish good morning to committee members, to guests who are joining us on the Zoom, and to those who may be watching either on the internet or the legislature's YouTube channel. We have reached day 58 of the 81st session of the Nevada Legislature. Before we get to our agenda, just a few quick housekeeping matters. Many of you can probably say these in your sleep at this point, but for the benefit of those who are joining us for the first time, I'll just remind you that if you are on the Zoom with us, can you please be sure to mute when you're not speaking? That'll help with any audio feedback that we get. And if you're presenting a bill today and answering questions in particular, if you could please state your name each time before you speak, that'll help our committee secretaries prepare accurate minutes. I'll try to remind you to do that if you forget. We do expect courtesy and respect in our interactions with one another. We don't always agree on policy. That is perfectly acceptable, but we need to make sure we're being respectful of one another, of the legislative process, and of our hardworking staff. Finally, many committee members are using multiple devices to access this virtual meeting, including desktops, laptops, extra monitors, iPads, iPhones, and the like. So please don't see it as a sign of disrespect or inattention if members appear to be looking away during today's meeting. With those matters behind us, committee, you can see we have 4 bills on the agenda today, and I'm going to take them slightly out of order. So just so everyone knows, we'll take the last bill on the agenda. We'll take that one first because we have the largest number of presenters helping us with that bill. And then we'll start from the top and take the other 3 in the order that they are listed on the agenda. So at this time, I'm going to open the hearing on Assembly Bill 406. Assembly Bill 406 revises provisions relating to the collection of child support. I know we have a number of folks on the Zoom with us this morning. I believe we have Ms. Cliff, as well as, I'm not sure who we have from the department, but I'll give you a chance to make your presentation, and then I'm sure we'll have some questions. So when you're ready to proceed with the presentation, please go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Kathy Kaplan. Good morning, Chairman Yeager and members of the committee. I'm with the Division of Welfare and Supportive Services, the Chief of Child Support Enforcement. With me today in the room is Kim Smalley. She's a program specialist in the policy unit. And on the line down south is Karen Cliff, Chief Deputy from Clark County District Attorney's Office, Family Support Division. I'm here this morning to present AB 406. The Nevada Child Support Enforcement Program has over 83,500 open child support cases. Of those cases, there are over 68,000 with obligors who are in arrears with their child support obligation. Existing statute allows past due support to be withheld when an obligor wins prize or lottery. However, there are no current processes for licensed gaming establishments to identify delinquent obligors and withhold from gambling winnings. As a result, delinquent obligors are receiving gambling payouts directly without winnings contributing to the financial security of their children. The implementation of the process outlined in AB 406 will provide a secure, electronically accessible method for withholding the gambling winnings of obligors owing child support arrears. Additional collections from gambling winnings distributed to custodial parents will increase the self-sufficiency of children and families while reducing the burden on state resources in the form of public assistance. Although this bill proposes a new process for Nevada, withholding from gambling winnings is not a new concept. At least 19 other states across the nation have successfully implemented statutes requiring gaming establishments to withhold winnings. Implementation of 406 will provide a clear process for withholding of gambling winnings using the same procedures as currently used for other one-time lump sum withholdings for support. Past concerns with legislation of this nature have included a reluctance to unreasonably burden gaming establishments, as well as a reluctance for providing access to large amounts of personal data and financial records. Section 1 of AB 406 places the vast majority of burden on the division. It will be the responsibility of the division to establish and maintain the registry used for identifying delinquent obligors. Staff selected by each gaming establishment will be given restricted electronic access to the registry. When a patron has a gambling winning in an amount which would require reporting to the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, on a form W2G, the staff member will log into the registry, enter the identifying information such as a Social Security number already provided by the patron for the W2G. If the patron is known to the registry and meets the delinquency criteria, the staff member will be able to download a one-time order notice of lump sum payment on a federal income withholding form. The amount reflected on the form would be deducted from the winnings and remitted to the division. An administrative fee may be retained by the establishment, and any remaining balance of the winnings would be paid to the patron. If the patron is not known to the registry, the winnings could be paid out in full. Once processed, the gaming establishment will not be required to maintain the income withholding order for future winnings. As with other enforcement tools utilized by the division, procedural due process will be applied and obligors will be provided with an opportunity to contest the withholding. Child support is a performance-based program that meets certain performance measures. Collections is one of the performance measures. So if Nevada increases collections, there's an opportunity to compete for additional incentive funds. These funds are 100% federally granted and must be used specifically for program enhancements. The child support program is currently in the process of replacing the automated system known as NV Kids, and we're scheduled to go live in May of 2022. And it will include an interactive portal that will be used for employers so they could access income withholding orders and employment verifications. And our plan is to use federal incentive funds to make improvements to NV Kids to add a secure electronically accessible registry required in AB 406. To ensure sufficient time and development for implementation of this process, an implementation date no sooner than July 1st of 2023 is proposed. Thank you for your time, and I want to turn it over to Karen Cliff, who will give you some additional testimony on the bill.
Karen Cliff on behalf of the Clark County District Attorney's Office Family Support Division. Good morning, Chair Yeager, Vice Chair Nguyen, and members of the Assembly. Thank you for your consideration today of AB 406. The bill contains two primary sections. Section 1 requires the state Department of Health and Human Services to establish and maintain a secure registry for the purpose of withholding gaming winnings. The gaming winnings are defined in the bill as winnings at a licensed gaming establishment that are required to report to the IRS on Form W2G. The registry would contain pertinent information such as the name, the address, amount of arrears, and it does require the adoption of the regulations by the Gaming Control Board. It also requires the casino to review the registry prior to payout of the winnings. The gaming establishment is entitled to a $25 administrative fee for carrying out these duties. If the obligor has arrears as identified by the registry, winnings up to the amount of the arrears are to be withheld. The gaming establishment has 5 business days to remit the funds to the state and provide notice to the state of the relevant information, such as the name, the address, the pertinent information that is noted in the registry. Upon receipt of the funds by the state is to send notice to the obligor in the event a hearing is requested. The obligor has 20 days to make this request, and a good faith effort to resolve the matter is required, and that would be between the Child Support Office and the obligor. The state cannot disperse these funds until the case, the child support case, until 23 days has lapsed post notice or at the conclusion of the hearing. The gaming establishment is immune from criminal and civil liability arising from their compliance. Now, Section 2 of the bill is a bit more simplistic. It amends NRS 31A.150 to include gaming winnings as funds that may be withheld for the support of a child. As Kathy mentioned, there are 19 states that successfully implemented gaming intercepts for the purpose of supporting the child support program. This practice has been in existence in some states as early as 2008. Colorado is one of them. For 5 years, Colorado casinos fought off the legislation. They made their first collection the day it was implemented. That same year, they collected $500,000. To date, well over $4 million has been collected. The executive director of the Colorado Gaming Association initially opposed legislation for fear that the child support review that was conducted prior to payout would be troublesome. However, their experience has been the opposite. It's been a very smooth transition. Federal regulations permit a wide range of collection efforts. Nevada is on the forefront of engaging in numerous actions to include license suspension, income tax withholdings, pension seizures, passport suspensions. But gaming intercepts is the huge piece that we are missing in Nevada. And as Kathy touched upon, child support collections significantly reduce the federal, state, and local costs of providing cash assistance to single-parent families. Every collection, large or small, benefit families. These funds help provide shelter, food, clothing, and school supplies for children. Passage of this bill will ensure financial support is a reality. And I just want to close by asking whether there are any questions today.
Thank you so much for the presentation. There are a few questions already. Let me just ask a couple while I have it in front of me. And I'm making a note of a couple folks I saw raise their hands. But the first one was, I think the testimony was this system that is envisioned in Section 1, Subsection 1, the Secure Electronically Accessible Registry. I think the testimony was that is set to come online, or the aim is to get that online in May of 2022. I just wonder if someone could give us an update on, is that already in the works, or does that still need to go out for potential request for information, request for, I can't remember, RFP. I don't remember what it stands for right now, but if you could let me know where you are in the process, please.
I'll defer to Kathy, but I do want to note that the system has already been built, but in terms of the gaming intercept portion, that can be built in, correct, Kathy?
Kathy Kaplan for the record. So our NV Kids system is a 6-year project. We are in the implementation phase of it right now. It started in 2017. Our plan is to have our first pilot office in November of this year, and we're rolling out across the state in phases, and our final phase will be May of 2022. And our plan is, once it's out, implemented, we've worked through all of our bugs and issues, is we would sit down with the gaming establishments and design what would work for them to make it the most non-invasive process for them. So it would be an add-on to our NB Kids system.
Thank you. And then the second question I had, in section 1 of the bill, I guess it's really subsection 5 and subsection 6. So there's essentially this procedure where, somebody can contest having the money, I guess not necessarily withheld, but having it remitted to the division. And there's this procedure in subsection 5 where it says, essentially there has to be a good faith effort to resolve the matter between the obligor and the division, and that a meeting has to take place to try to do that. So that's subsection 5. And then when you look at subsection 6, it talks about the hearing, and it basically says the hearing happens within 20 calendar days of that. I'll essentially call it a meet and confer or an attempt to negotiate. So my question is, what if that doesn't happen? Like, what if the obligor contests what's going on, but doesn't meet and make a good faith effort with the division to resolve it? Does it still go to a hearing within 20 calendar days? Is that hearing still triggered, or what will we do in that circumstance where that meeting never really happens?
So I'm going to defer, Kathy Kaplan for the record, I'll defer to Kim Smalley to answer that question.
Thank you, Kim Smalley for the record. If the responsibility to reach out to the obligor is on the division, if the obligor requests a hearing and fails to provide any reason for that request, we would not go to hearing. That initial meeting is a requirement. If the case were to be reviewed, if the obligor requested a hearing based on a mistake of fact, and that case was reviewed and it was found that it was an error, we would not need to go to the hearing. We would release the funds. But if it was the obligor requested a hearing, there was no basis for the hearing found, and the obligor failed to contact and have that initial meeting after the allotted time frame of 23 days from notice, the funds would be released to the case.
Thank you for that. I have a number of questions from committee members. So I think I have 6 folks in the queue so far. This is the order we're going to go in. Assemblywoman Krasner, Assemblywoman Kasama, Assemblyman Wheeler, Vice Chair Wynn, Assemblywoman Cohen, Assemblywoman Gonzalez, and I should note for the record that Assemblywoman Gonzalez and Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod are both present. They arrived during the presentation. So Mr. Secretary, could you please mark them as present? And we'll go at this time to Assemblywoman Krasner for a question.
Oh, thank you, Chair Yeager, and thank you for your presentation. So my question is more of a liability question. In the event that a team member of the gaming establishment fails to adhere to the requirements of the bill, would the casino be liable for the team members' mistake in providing those unconfiscated funds, or what would the procedure in a case like that be?
So Kathy Kaplan for the record, I would anticipate that as part of the bill requirement, we would work out details such as that with the Gaming Control Board. That is one of the steps that this bill does bring forward, that we'll work out procedural processes with them prior to the implementation.
Thank you.
We'll go next to Assemblywoman Kasama.
Thank you, Chair Yeager, Assemblywoman Kasama, District 2. So at first I thought this was a lot of work for, the one-off that might win megabucks, but hearing your presentation with the money that's been collected is very impressive, I think, and I support this. I think this is great, a great way to collect it. My question is this the first time, I'm just curious, is this the first time the gaming establishments have had to look to another source for withholdings? At this point, they've only been responsible for IRS withholdings. And also, would this include any establishment like the little bar and grill that has 15 video games? will it also include them that, they have to go to the registry and double check? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Assemblywoman Casamas. Kathy Kaplan for the record. It would include all gaming establishments. We don't want to pick on one or the other. We want to make it fair across the board. And as far as I know, this is the first time that they've had to withhold for other reasons, for other debts. I don't know the full answer to that. Karen Cliff, do you happen to know?
So currently casinos do withhold for wage withholdings for income to comply with the child support order. The casinos withhold for the current support, the arrears obligation. That answered the question.
Thank you.
Okay.
Assemblyman Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a little worried about the security issues of this and the information that is on the database. I've seen things like in my own district, for instance, where someone has paid up their child support and the state really hasn't updated their records yet. And, 3 months later, they get dinged for another child support payment. Then it's a bear to get back through it. But in the casino itself, who has access to this database? Will they have to hire a special employee, for instance, that has some kind of a special security type clearance so that this information doesn't get out, to the public or to a friend or whatever? Oh, Joe was in here, he won, $50,000 last night, but we attached 25,000 of it for his child support. How is that handled? What's the security information? What's the security procedures for this?
Kathy, do you mind if I address this for a moment?
Go ahead, Karen.
This is Karen Cliff. Good morning, Assemblyman Wheeler. In terms of the data and the security, so currently, all of the employees, whether it's at the DA's office or a state employee that has access to this database even now, has to complete confidentiality forms. Currently, the information that we're asking the casino employees to review is information they would obtain in terms of completing that W-2G form. The social, the address, all of the information that's necessary to inform the IRS.
Thank you. Follow up, Mr. Chair.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. It'd be a quick one. So what you're saying is that, right now it's accountants doing it with the same information, but they're not, and they sign a confidentiality agreement. So it seems to me you're going to have someone in the casino itself, probably in the cage, I would think, that, or that area, that accounting type area, they're going to have to hire a special employee that can somehow keep security here. So thank you for your question, or for your answer. My question, your answer.
Okay, up next, I have Assemblywoman Cohen.
Thank you, Chair. So I appreciate the information about Colorado, but we know that people aren't coming from other states to gamble in Colorado the way they do to Nevada. So how does this interplay with UIFSA, and if people are coming from other states and winning jackpots here, and there's already a case here because of UIFSA? Can you just address that, please?
Karen Cliff on behalf of the District Attorney's Office. Good morning, Assemblywoman Cohen. We are only going to be noting on the database cases that are open within the state of Nevada that we're enforcing. So if a tourist, for example, comes in from, let's say, Texas, and there's no open child support case here, we would not be intercepting those gaming winnings. So UIFSA aside, it would only be whether or not there's an open child support case being enforced by a local Nevada office.
Okay, thank you.
Next up, we have Assemblywoman Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Assemblywoman Gonzalez, District 16 for the record. I'm curious, in other states that have this, how much like garnishing are they doing in terms of money that they get for for their cases?
Good morning, Assemblywoman Gonzalez. Karen Cliff again. So again, there's 19 states. We've been able to sort of look at historically what they're collecting. Ohio collects quite a bit, but just to sort of give you an example, in North Carolina from 2008 to 2017, and we're talking about states with very limited gaming, they collected over $1 million, $1,139,000. Louisiana, and again, there's similar casinos there. We have Harrah's that are operating in other states, and they're participating in this gaming intercept. So you look at Louisiana, they have 20 casinos statewide. From 2016 to 2017, you're looking at about 4,455,000. And during that time period, just within the year, you're looking at probably about 3,000 intercepts, and that netted over $4 million. But again, the numbers are staggering amongst these 19 states, and so we're certain with the level of gaming in Nevada, it would be impressive for these families. Anything further, Assemblywoman Gonzalez, that I can add in terms of states and numbers?
No, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Assemblywoman Marzola, did you still have a question or did it get answered?
I don't. Thank you, Chair. It did get answered.
Okay, great. Assemblywoman Hanson, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. And I appreciate this bill. On its face, I'm completely supportive. As a child who didn't get child support growing up, my mother did her best, but it was certainly difficult. I support any legal means we can garnish what would be rightfully due to a child and a single parent. So the logistics, I'm thinking there was a lot of logistics involved in originally just setting up the garnishment process. So and I think this will be directed toward, I'm sorry, the two ladies at the table. As far as the logistical rollout, it seems to me the foundation is already there within agencies, within the DA's office, and the gaming establishments are already having to work with the IRS reporting of the winner. The winner has to fill out the form. They're facilitating that. I'm trying to understand, to me, it doesn't seem like a huge lift. I'm sure in opposition, we might hear differently. So can you just, in your opinion, the logistics in legal terms here, it looks like a lot, but isn't the foundation already there to pretty much make this streamline in okay?
So Kathy Kaplan, for the record, thank you so much for the question. Our intention is to make a portal and make it as easy as possible to the gaming establishments. And what we envision is once you've gained that information for the W2G form, you would log into our NV Kids portal, input that information, and at that time you would instantly get a match or a no match to that record. And so if there's no match, you could pay out the winnings to the patron and no harm, no foul. If you get a match, you would get a download of an income withholding order, so you would know exactly what needed to be garnished. And the good part about this is we haven't built anything yet. And so we're hoping to sit down at the table with each of the gaming establishments and try to streamline it, make it as easy as possible, and build something that just is easy to work and no burden on the gaming establishment whatsoever. Does that answer your question, Assemblywoman Hanson?
Yes. Chair, if I could just follow up with one other.
Please.
And also, we own a business. We have to garnish wages for child support. And so I'm thinking, going back to some of my colleagues' questions about who would handle this information, I'm assuming HR, they are the ones who handle this, as it is with the garnishment of their employees. So wouldn't it just probably be a lot of the same HR people that have been entrusted with that information of the employees to now handle the information of winners, possibly being on the registry and having those earnings garnished?
Kathy Kaplan for the record. Thank you for your question. We wouldn't dictate exactly who would have access to the system. We would want to leave it up to each gaming establishment, because maybe it's the cash cage people that would handle the W2G form. And so it would just be a process flow. And the next step would be to log into our portal and check to see if there is an outstanding child support obligation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, this is Karen Cliff. I wanted to just briefly touch upon Assemblyman Wheeler's comment about the data. It was something I overlooked, and I apologize. This is real-time data. So we should never encounter an issue where a portion of the arrears are paid off and perhaps the computer was misreading. It will be real time, and that's something that is critical for this gaming intercept to work.
Okay, do we have additional questions from committee members? Assemblyman O'Neill?
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it. Actually, Ms. Cliff, I think you could hopefully answer my questions. You're talking about real time in Clark County, or is it going to be real time across the state? White Pine, Elko, Eureka?
Good morning, Assemblyman O'Neill. It will be real-time statewide. It is a statewide system.
Yeah, so the system would all be automated. There wouldn't be any phone calls at 1 o'clock in the morning by somebody.
No, thankfully, no.
Amen to that. Thank you. Chair, may I just ask two more questions? Hopefully they'll be short and quick.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. What other, just for my edification, what other income sources do we, for child welfare, access now for garnishment of wages?
Karen Cliff. Do you want me to take that, Kathy?
Yeah, I was just gonna tap you in.
So in terms of garnishment of wages, so we have a lot of enforcement opportunities. We do garnish employment income. I mentioned some of the earlier types of enforcements. We take liens on real and personal property. We are involved in litigation in terms of judicial foreclosures, personal injury matters. But the gaming intercepts provides an interesting opportunity to collect child support for families, because in the state of Nevada, we do have a segment of our population that is not employed through an employer. We have many individuals that, for lack of a better word, are working under the table. And so we can only withhold where we have a valid employer. And so we have individuals that are self-payers or the unbanked, and so we're unable to seize funds from a banking institution. And so this gaming intercept provides an opportunity for us to collect funds on cases that we would never otherwise be able to collect unless the individual makes a voluntary payment.
I appreciate that. And one last question. Do you have any, as I recall, the W2G forms are filled out, I think it's 10 and winning in excess of 10,000, or is it 12,000?
So there's probably someone from the Gaming Control Board here. This is Karen again, but my understanding is that changes depending on the type of gambling. So for slots, it would be 1,200, but for a table game, I believe it's 10,000 or more. And I know that the gaming regulations are intense, but I do believe that number fluctuates depending on the type of gambling.
And then, do you have any projections at all on what let's say we enacted this law 2 years ago, what we would have collected already?
We were asked this actually briefly by the Nevada Resort Association, and I have to say, I don't have a number. I can only imagine it's staggering just given what we've seen in Ohio and some of the other states. In the millions, we know that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman Yeager, this is Kim Surratt. I might be able to add some color to that.
Please go ahead.
All right, then Kim Surratt for the record. I am current NJA president, was a past president of the Family Law Section, current chair of the State Child Support Commission, but I do not speak on behalf of the commission. I cannot, but as a family law attorney, a private family law attorney, I will tell you a large majority of our cases have gambling addiction problems. And often when you have a non-paying parent, there are other reasons. It may be drugs, it may be alcohol, it may be gambling, but often it's one of those causes that is a problem. And I know just in my small practice with 4 family law attorneys that we personally could have collected far more child support than we ever have with this bill. The concept is not foreign, it's not new, because we do have a registry for the insurance companies. And we talked about this last session and made some modifications to that law where it required all the insurance companies to participate in it. And the collections are going up, and access is the number one thing we need in order to collect child support. If you have access, you have a means, you know what they're doing, you know more about their behaviors, and you can go after it. Without any knowledge of gambling, there's very few ways for us to figure out gambling problems. We can subpoena a casino for their records when they use the players' cards and that type of stuff. That's extremely expensive in a family law case. This is a far cheaper, easier way of finding out about that money.
Chair, may I ask Ms. Surratt a question then?
Yep, one last question, please.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully be my last. Ms. Surratt, then, I understand the intent of this bill is to collect arrears that are owed for child support. I understand what you're saying. You're saying you want data on how to go after people that are in arrears and use it for other things, maybe child custody arguments, anything else, or to increase child support numbers, not just the simple, what I thought was the intent of this bill. Could you clarify that for me, please?
Yes, sorry, Assemblyman O'Neill. Kim Surratt for the record. No, that is not what I meant by that. I just meant that in these cases, they're complicated and arrears are the problem. I mean, when we're looking to support children and do what's in their best interest, child support arrears are very damaging to families. And through the DA's office, that's the only place we have a lot of these tools. I, as a private attorney, do not have a tool to determine if there was gaming winnings. They have these tools. They can put a hold on their driver's license, their hunting licenses now, lien their tax returns, all things I can't do as a private attorney. But these cases that they're collecting within this system are ones that are truly in arrears. They're not, they missed a $100 payment one month and they're suddenly in the system with, garnishments on gaming winnings. These are true systematic arrears, people who are not paying.
I appreciate that clarification. Thank you for the time allowing me, Chair. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. In the interest of time, and given that we have 3 other bills on the agenda, I think I'm going to stop there with questions. Members, if you do have additional questions, I would encourage you to reach out to our presenters offline. But to our presenters, I want to say thank you and just ask you to sit tight for a moment while we take some testimony on the bill, and then we'll come back for any concluding remarks. So at this time, I'm going to open up testimony in support on Assembly Bill 406. Ms. Surratt, I know you're on the Zoom and you answered some questions, but did you want to testify in support on the bill as well?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'll just state briefly, this is Kim Surratt for the record. I'm appearing on behalf of the Nevada Justice Association, our domestic committee, and we are in support of the bill.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Is there anybody else on the Zoom who would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 406? You don't see any activity on the Zoom. BPS, could we go to the phone lines to see if there's anybody there who'd like to testify in support this morning?
Yes, thank you, Chair. To testify in support of Bill AB 406, press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. And we will begin our testimony with the caller with the last 3 digits of 198. Press star 6 to unmute yourself, and then state your name and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning to the committee. This is Carrie Lepre Cordisco, Deputy District Attorney for the Family Support Division in Washoe County. I have been basically on the line for 26 years doing the child support enforcement. We are testifying in support of this bill. The sad fact that there are many cases or many obligors in the 7,000 cases that will be enforced and which are non-welfare cases where the obligors do not pay their child support unless it's garnished. And many of the same obligors are, as Karen indicated, are self-employed or work at jobs we cannot collect from, and they gamble. And they are certainly not going to make they're not going to make volunteer payments toward their child support arrears, no matter how much they win. So this bill will allow us to automatically and immediately intercept those funds and get them directly to the families in Nevada. I would hope that you would support this bill.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Cordisco, and we will also note the barking dog, I think likely was in support of the bill as well, so we'll note that for the record. BPS, could we go to the next caller in support, please?
Yes, Chair. Would the caller with the last 3 digits of 648 slowly state and spell your name for the record? You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Chair Yeager, members of the Assembly Judiciary Committee. My name is John Jones, John Jones, here on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association, and we are in strong support of AB 403. I want to start off by thanking Chairman Yeager for giving us the opportunity to present this bill. AB 403 gives Nevada child support a tool missing from its arsenal to go after parents who are neglecting their obligation to children. That money, once collected from the obligor, goes directly to families and children. And as highlighted by the presenters, the more money we collect, the more money we get back from the federal government in the form of incentive grants. We are willing to work with anybody to make this bill work for Nevada. Again, we are in support of AB 403. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Jones. BPS, are there any additional callers in support?
Yes, Chair, there are. Would the caller with the last 3 digits of 377 hit star 6 to unmute yourself and then slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning. My name is Deshaun Jackson, DASHUN, I serve as the Director of Children's Safety and Welfare Policy with the Children's Advocacy Alliance, and we stand in support of AB 406. We believe this bill is essential to ensuring that children are taken care of in the state of Nevada. Thank you all so much.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Jackson. BPS, if there are additional callers in support, let's take the next one, please.
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 406, press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in the queue at this time.
Thank you, BPS. I will close testimony in support. I will now open it up for testimony in opposition. I don't think anyone on the Zoom would like to testify in opposition, but just in case I'm wrong, I'll give it a minute to see if anyone unmutes and turns the camera on. I don't see that happening. BPS, could we go to the phone lines for opposition testimony, please?
Yes. To give opposition testimony to Assembly Bill 406, press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. And we will begin with the caller with the last three digits of 139. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Chair Yeager and committee members. Misty Grimmer, Grimmer, with the Ferraro Group, representing the Nevada Resort Association. We appreciate very much that the proponents reached out to us early on this bill and support their goal to maximize the amount of child support collections that can be tracked down. Unfortunately, at this time, we are in opposition to AB 406. While we understand that systems similar to this are in place in other states that have gambling, the gaming industry in Nevada is much bigger and more complex than in most other states. So the complexity of the system and the privacy concerns are a more prominent factor here. We are happy to keep working with the proponents on developing the system, but are not comfortable participating in the system until it is fully developed and we are confident of its reliability, accuracy, and security. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Grimmer. BPS, are there additional callers in opposition?
To provide opposition testimony to Assembly Bill 406, press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no more callers in the queue wishing to provide opposition testimony.
Thank you. I will close opposition testimony. I will now open neutral testimony. We don't have anybody on the Zoom in neutral. BPS, could we go to the phone lines to see if there's anybody there who'd like to offer testimony in neutral?
To provide neutral testimony on Assembly Bill 406, press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in the queue at this time.
Thank you, BPS. I will close neutral testimony, and I welcome our presenters back to the virtual table to make any concluding remarks on Assembly Bill 406. Perhaps let's start with the division, and then we'll go to Ms. Cliff.
Thank you, Chairman Yeager. Kathy Kaplan for the record. I just want to close by thanking you for allowing us the time to present AB 406. I just want to, put it out there to any opposition or any supporters that our plan is to build a very secure, reliable database so that the gaming industry is not suffering any hardships in finding out if a patron owes child support arrears. We do want to work with anybody that has any questions or concerns. We're open for any contact that you guys may have. Thank you.
Karen Cliff. This gaming intercept program is a key component for Nevada to continue to promote economic stability for families. In terms of the reliability and the accuracy, our program, under the guise of federal regulations, we're subject to data reliability audits, state audits. We have to comply with a host of regulatory measures. We don't have issues in Nevada with our accuracy, our reliability. I'm confident in our state programs and our numbers. If there are any questions, we encourage a conversation offline. We thank you for your time today. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for presenting Assembly Bill 406 this morning. Appreciate your time with us here this morning, and we're wishing you a great rest of the day as well. At this time, I will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 406, so we will go back up to the top of our agenda. And before we do that, let me ask Madam Vice Chair, I think you are presenting both of those bills. Do you have a preference in terms of which one we take first?
I do not, whatever you choose.
Okay, well then let's just stick with the order that the bills are listed on the agenda. So at this time, I will open the hearing on Assembly Bill 393. Assembly Bill 393 makes various changes relating to criminal justice. And as I just noted, Vice Chair Wynn will be presenting the bill, so we'll give her an opportunity to do that. And then I'm sure we'll have some questions. So welcome to the virtual presentation table, and please proceed.
Morning, Chair Yeager and members of the Judiciary Committee. the hardest working morning committee that there is in the Assembly, as far as I'm concerned. I am here to present Assembly Bill 393 today for your consideration. This will be a short presentation, and I will open it up to any questions. I do have Victoria Gonzalez, and if she could, there she is, you know, and if she could unmute and just tell us her title so we know what her title is, because I don't know it.
Good morning, Victoria Gonzalez for the record. I am the Executive Director of the Nevada Department of Sentencing Policy, and we support the Nevada Sentencing Commission in making its data-driven policy recommendations for sentencing corrections. Thank you, Assemblywoman Wynn.
See, I never would have got the entire title. Rochelle Wynn for the record. Again, I represent Assembly District 10 in central Las Vegas. And I'm here to present this bill. This is essentially a cleanup bill. In the 2019 session, this Assembly Judiciary passed and it became law in July of 2020, Assembly Bill 236. And it was kind of a omnibus, huge criminal reinvestment, criminal justice reform bill. We knew, I think it was over 150, 160 pages. And so as you can imagine, we learned even in the last, last 9 months, that there were things that needed to be cleaned up. As a part of the Advisory Commission on the Administration of Justice, as well as the Sentencing Commission, those were two interim commissions and committees that met, and the implications of AB 236 were very evident there. They were you all received the annual reports in January from both of those commissions, and some of you who sat on this committee last year were able to watch the 3.5-hour presentation from Justice Hardesty and our own Chair Yeager in presenting Assembly Bill 236. So that is this. This is just some cleanup language. The recommendations that were included here came out unanimously from both of those commissions and interim committee work. So I don't see there being too much opposition. You know, obviously sometimes the language as it comes out doesn't reflect what we would hope. But I think we have a pretty good understanding of what our intent was in cleaning up some of these statutes. And rather than go through all 68 pages of this, I will open this up for questions that hopefully myself and Ms. Gonzalez can answer if necessary.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair Wynn, and welcome back, Ms. Gonzalez. Ms. Gonzalez, for those of you who don't know, was heavily involved in the Advisory Commission on the Administration of Justice from the 2017-2018 interim, where Assembly Bill 236 of the 2019 session was sort of developed and processed and worked on. So she's very familiar with this legislation, and we're happy to have you back in the committee. Before, I know we have a couple questions. Before I take those, Vice Chair Wynn, and I don't know if you can answer this, or I think we have other folks on the phone who are involved in this bill as well, but I just wanted to confirm in section, let me find it. Section 21 of the bill, it looks like a lot of new language there, but my understanding was essentially our statutes now, parole and probation are sort of lumped into the same statute. And I just wanted to confirm that what Section 21 does is essentially separates those out so that parole will have its own section and probation will have its own section. So although it appears to be a lot of new language in Section 21, it's just the same language that already exists in a different section of law.
That's correct. This isn't anything new. Parole and probation had contacted us during the commission hearings on the ACAJ about how this would add to clarity in implementation of 236. And this would just add clarity by including him in those two separate sections. So it isn't new language. It just allows them to implement the law from AB 236 more efficiently.
Thank you. I think I saw Assemblywoman Kasama with her hand up, so we'll go there next for a question.
Actually, Assemblywoman Kasama for the record, District 2. Thank you, Chair. Question to you, Vice Chair Wynn. why do we have two separate sections for parole and probation? My question just came up from your question there. What are the major differences? Why are they not combined? I guess, why are we separating them?
Well, if there was something here from parole and probation, they would probably be in the best position to answer that question. But generally, my understanding of having there be two different sections is probation for the members of the committee is if you are under a current sentence. So if you've been sentenced and you've been granted a probationary period, you have probation officers, and they are dealing with you while your sentence, I guess, it's a part of your sentence. Mm-hmm. And parole is after you have served your sentence. So you've served your sentence, you've been eligible for parole, and you are that. Chair Yeager is messaging me saying that parole and probation is on the line. So I think Tom Lawson is on the line. So if he can hop on, that would be wonderful. He might be able to clarify that with more accuracy than me.
I'm not sure. Are we able to get Mr. Lawson on the line, or if not, we could always wait until he speaks in support, I believe, to answer that question.
I think that was just kind of a general overview. Okay. I was looking for too. Great. That is great. If I may, Chair, one other question.
Please go ahead.
Yes. So on page 17, that would be section 8, part 4. It says the divisions shall develop an individualized case plan for each probationer. The case plan must include, and it goes on. I'm just curious, we've already been doing case plans, right? Is this just kind of codifying it again? But we've already been doing case plans along the way. Isn't that correct? This is not new.
Again, I believe that this section that you're referring to is just, it already exists in statute. We're just making it clear that it exists for probationers and parolees.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And I believe we will have, hopefully have someone on the phone line that can speak to those issues as well. So we will hopefully hear from somebody in support. Do we have other questions for Vice Chair Wynn? Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong, did you have a question?
Thank you, Chair. I believe I have found the answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our committee is getting resourceful here halfway into the session, finding our own answers before we get to you for questions. I love it. It means we're doing the work that we need to do in this committee. Any additional questions from committee members for Vice Chair Wynn, who I assure you can handle the heat? Okay, I'm not seeing additional questions at this time, so Vice Chair Wynn, appreciate the presentation. I'll ask you to sit tight for a moment while we take some testimony on the bill. At this time, I will open it up for testimony in support of Assembly Bill 393. Ms. Gonzalez, did you want to testify in support or in addition? Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair Yeager. I wanted to thank Chair Yeager and Vice Chair Wynn for the collaboration of putting forth this legislation, and also thank you for the support for supporting the Nevada Sentencing Commission and our very brand new, very small department. I just wanted to echo some of what Vice Chair Wynn mentioned about what some of these changes are. Our department is testifying in support of this bill to make that clear. Victoria Gonzalez, again, for the record, testifying in support of AB 393. Back in 2019, the bill that moved the Nevada Sentencing Commission from the legislature to the executive branch and made it a full-time commission also created our department. And those two bills happened, that bill happened independently of AB 236. However, AB 236 in its sweeping criminal justice reform tasked the Sentencing Commission with tracking and assessing the outcomes of AB 236, which include rigorous data collection and writing and submitting various reports. So these changes just make it clear that the department is the agency that's supporting the commission in these efforts, specific to the writing of the reports, administering the meetings, and collecting and aggregating that data. So I just wanted to clarify that what the changes were, and wanted to clarify again what Vice Chair Wynn said, that the commission voted unanimously on these changes at our October 28th meeting, and were presented to the Advisory Commission on the Administration of Justice. So again, thank you again for your support of the commission, for this bill, and for our department. And if there's anything that this body needs, I invite you to reach out to us. I'd be happy to talk more about what we do and what the commission does, and look for opportunities to support each of you in your efforts with looking for that data related to criminal justice reform. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate that testimony in support and all of your work to support all these efforts that are going on in the state. We greatly appreciate it. And I know that you have been working very short-staffed and really been doing the job of 3 or 4 people for the last couple of years. So just want to say thank you for those efforts. They do not go unnoticed. I noticed while you were speaking, we had Captain Lawson join us from Parole and Probation. He is on the Zoom, so I'd like to go there. I believe he's going to offer supportive testimony and perhaps be able to answer a couple of those questions that were asked. So welcome, Mr. Lawson.
Thank you, Chairman Yeager, and thank you, Vice Chair Wynn, for bringing forward the language in this bill. And yes, this is Tom Lawson with Division of Parole and Probation. For the record, we are in support of this bill and the language presented. And I made some notes while the questions were coming in. So if I missed one of them that I can provide an answer to, please give me the high sign and I will provide information. So first, I'd like to confirm Chairman Yeager's comment regarding the cleanup of the differences between the bill. And I think this also will answer another one of the members' questions, is that Chapter 176A in NRS deals strictly with probation and probationers and all the terms and conditions, granting, discharging, and everything to do with probation. Chapter 213 does the same, but for the parole side of the house. And so the confusion that we're seeking to clarify here is that under Chapter 213, there were references to parole. And so when our staff or anybody is looking for, hey, what are the rules for probationers? You had to go to 176A, but if you didn't find it there, then you also had to check the parole statute, where it wouldn't really intuitively be for guidance on probationers. And so the language that you're seeing here in the like Section 8, for example, the language there, Section 21, there's a bunch of changes where it's just conforming changes to remove references of parole from the probation statute and vice versa. And so it looks like a lot of stuff here, but the language on either of those chapters that was implemented during AB 236 last time, where it was put in one chapter before, it's just repeated in both chapters now. We have not sought to change into the elements that were added last time. We're just clarifying that all the probation stuff is in the proper chapter, all the parole stuff is in the other chapter, and they're no longer crossing reference.
Let me find my unmute button there. So while we have Chief Lawson, just want to make sure that answered, I think that answered Assemblywoman Kasama's questions, but any other questions for Mr. Lawson while we have him here? Okay, I don't see additional questions. Thank you for jumping on the Zoom. We certainly appreciate that and appreciate your testimony and support.
Thank you, sir. Tom Lawson again for the record. And just one more note is that Chairman DeRico from the Parole Board was unavailable to attend this morning. He's getting his second COVID shot as we speak. But he asked me to pass along that the Parole Board is also in support of the bill as written. And thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Chief Lawson. Appreciate that. And hopefully I'm getting your title right. I know you've been a lot of different titles along the years, but I think it's Chief now, right?
It is, sir. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Chief Lawson. Anybody else on the Zoom who'd like to testify in support? I think that does it for the folks on Zoom. BPS, could we go to the phone lines and see if there's anybody there who'd like to offer supportive testimony for Assembly Bill 393?
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 393, press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. To testify in support of Assembly Bill 393, press star 9 now to take your place in the queue, and we will begin with the phone number ending in 648. Please press star 6 to unmute yourself and then slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Chair Yeager, members of the Assembly Judiciary Committee. My name is John Jones, John-Jones, here on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association, and just wanted to get our support of AB 393 on the record. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Jones. BPS, are there additional callers in support?
To offer testimony in support of AB 393, press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Here. Caller with the last 3 digits of 196. If you are offering testimony in support of Bill AB 393, slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Chairman Yeager and members of the committee. I'm Eric Spratley, ERICSPRATLEY, the Executive Director of the Nevada Sheriffs and Chiefs Association, here in support of Assembly Bill 393. And as a member of the ACAJ, we appreciate Vice Chair Wynn bringing this forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Spratley. BPS, if there are additional callers in support, let's take the next one, please.
Chair, there are no more callers in support of Assembly Bill 393 at this time.
Thank you, BPS. I will close testimony in support. I will now open testimony in opposition. We don't have anyone with us on the Zoom in opposition. BPS, could we check the phone lines to see if there's anybody there?
To offer testimony opposing Assembly Bill 393, press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in the queue at this time.
Thank you. I will close testimony in opposition. I will now open testimony in the neutral position. There isn't anyone on the Zoom in neutral. BPS, can we check the phones to see if there's anybody there?
Yes. To testify in the neutral position on Assembly Bill 393, press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in the queue at this time.
Thank you, BPS. I will close neutral testimony, and I will now hand it back over to Vice Chair Wynn for any concluding remarks on Assembly Bill 393.
Thank you, Rochelle Wynn, for the record. I just want to thank Victoria Gonzalez. She is just truly like one of those superhero people that collects data, is there as a resource. I would encourage all of our members to reach out to her and her team. It's a small team and they are doing amazing. They are doing the work of like an army, what they're doing on collecting data so we can make evidence-based like decisions in our state. So I just want to throw that out there, and I hope everyone will support Assembly Bill 393.
Thank you, Vice Chair Wynn. Appreciate the presentation this morning, and thank you again, Ms. Gonzalez, for being with us on the Zoom this morning and for all the work that you're doing. I will now close the hearing on Assembly Bill 393. At this time, I'm going to open the hearing on the next bill on our agenda, and that would be Assembly Bill 401. Assembly Bill 401 directs the Advisory Commission on the Administration of Justice to appoint a subcommittee to study records of criminal history. And before I turn it over to Vice Chair Wynn, I'll note for members of the committee and members of the public, there is an amendment to this bill on Nellis that came from Vice Chair Wynn, so I believe she'll probably be working off of that amendment. Welcome back to the virtual presentation table, Vice Chair Wynn, and please proceed.
Thank you. Rochelle Wynn, Assembly Bill, Assembly District 10. I represent Assembly District 10. I'm here to present Assembly Bill 401. You will see there is an amendment. It's a pretty substantial amendment. When I explained to LCB what I intended, I was not clear. So this is all on me. What I had intended is, for those of you that have sat on this committee, I know that Assemblywoman Krasner, this is a particular issue for her in her representation of her constituents. And I know that this is an important issue for our entire state, is year after year and session after session, and I'm sure I've seen so many bills come before us in only the 2 sessions I've been here. and I can only imagine what it is like for everyone else, is over and over and over again, we will hear bills about sealing records, about giving people second chances, about juvenile records, about whether or not we seal records or expunge records. Even when we have like proclamations or declarations, or we have like policies in place that want to seal like, simple misdemeanor marijuana possession charges. Actually implementing the policies that I think we all have agreed upon as a legislative body or in other areas is very difficult. And I think a lot of it has to do with what we have and what kind of processes that we have in place. So my intention with the proposed amendment that is up on Nellis that I think I provided to you all last week is to have a legislative commission that have a legislative commission appoint a committee of legislators composed of 6 legislators. So this would be a proposed study, and with the corresponding 5 BDRs that come out of any of these proposed and like voted upon studies that come out of the Assembly and Senate every session. To be able to review the types of records that are sealed, what's eligible for sealing, backlogs, current procedures, waiting times, any of these things, the age, the petition, the thing, to see what we can do to address our sealing, expungement, uniformity. This is something that I think that will be a lot of support to increase transparency, to help with our job market, to also look at how our sealing and our state sealing statutes also interact with some of the, for lack of a better word, like social media or internet websites that are possessed some of this data that they're able to collect from us. So I think looking at this and addressing the procedures and the process and making it more efficient is something that we really need to look at if we're going to move forward enacting the policy that we want to enact in these areas. So that's kind of the short of it. So I will open that up to any questions you might have.
Thank you, Vice Chair Wynn. We'll go first to Assemblywoman Krasner for a question.
Thank you, Chairman Yeager. From you to Vice Chair Wynn. Thank you so much for bringing this bill, Vice Chair Wynn. I really appreciate it. I know everyone across the state appreciates it. I have a question. So I'm informed that currently in Clark County, there is a mechanism for juvenile records where when the juvenile turns 21, their records are automatically sealed. And that is the law across the entire state of Nevada, but they're not doing it in Washoe County or the other counties. That's very concerning to me because it means that people that turn 21 who committed a crime as a juvenile and think their records are sealed, those records really aren't sealed. And I don't know if you can even comment on this, but that's very concerning.
Rochelle Lynn for the record. I'm not familiar with, what is happening across the state, but I am familiar enough to know that there are inconsistencies across the state. There's implementation issues, there are uniformity issues. And so, like I said, I'm hoping that having like an actual study and we'll have those kind of like in-depth conversations about what's happening across the country, what we can do in this state, having the people that are actually doing this on the ground, come in with real solutions like this is what would make my job easier. This is how we can accomplish these policy goals. Yes, you are, implementing all these laws that require this. This is why we can't do it if we're not doing it. So I think that, to your point, this is why we need this study. That's why we need to really take an in-depth look at what we currently have in place. So when we as legislators are enacting laws and policies, we know that they can be implemented.
Are there other questions from committee members? Go ahead, Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry, I didn't realize I hadn't turned my camera back on. One of the things that has been of concern to me, and we've spoken about this in previous discussions, is the availability of data to be picked up on the internet. And then businesses, whether they be government or private, using organizations to do their background checks for employment. And then that old data, outmoded data still being accessible. Now, I know that employers, I was just trying to Google to see what the name of it was. There's a national database where people can check to see if an employee has a valid Social Security number. Would you also consider, I didn't think I saw it in the proposed language, that employers, whether they are, especially government, that they use an official database to check on people's records so that we don't have this outmoded data interfering with people's ability once their records have been expunged or sealed, that it's not showing up, and then people can truly say, I don't have a conviction. I hope I explained that properly, and thank you, Vice Chair Wynn, for this bill.
Rochelle Wynn for the record. No, I think that's a great question. I think I tried to encompass some of those issues. With these study bills, you want to make them vague enough that you can allow the study committee to examine what they want to. I tried to include that in section 7, the applicability of current procedures in the state pursuing records of criminal history, which are posted on internet websites, social media. I would definitely be open to kind of expanding that definition to make it more broad so we can look at whether or not, what kinds of records, background records people are looking at, especially for state and government jobs. I think that's probably easier to require, but I'm not opposed to including having the interim committee study also focus on some of that issues. I think there is a lot of interplay between private industry and them being able to. I imagine that they would want a more uniformed approach to being able to check out background of their potential employees. And I think that this would allow for that as well.
Thank you.
Are there further questions from the committee for Vice Chair Wynn? I do not see further questions at this time. Vice Chair Wynn, thank you for presenting the bill. We'll take some testimony and then come back for concluding remarks. At this time, I will open it up for testimony in support of Assembly Bill 401. I don't believe we have anyone on the Zoom with us in support. BPS, could we check the phone lines to see if there's anybody there?
Yes, Chair. To testify in support of Assembly Bill 401, press *9 now to take your place in the queue. And we will begin with the caller with the last 3 digits of 725. Press *6 now to unmute yourself. Slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Chair Yeager and Vice Chair Wynn, committee members. This is Nick Shepak, NICKSHEPACK, with the ACLU of Nevada. We are here in support of AB 401, which is a much-needed study. Records is a confusing and complicated process. We seemingly can't expunge records in the state, and explaining why has been a convoluted mess. The governor's office offered record sealing for some marijuana offenses, and I believe at this time you can still count on your fingers and toes the number of people who have accessed that sealing process. A study that allows us to better understand these processes is very welcome. I don't think anyone would argue with the fact that we can do better in this area. We look forward to this study, the clarity it will bring, and hopefully a streamlining of the process. It is a community that suffers from the complexity and confusing nature of this process, and that is due to no fault of their own. We thank you for bringing this bill, and we look forward to the results of the study. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Shepak. BPS, are there additional callers in support?
Yes, Chair. We'll now go to the caller with the last three digits of 080. Slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hi, Jim Hoffman, Nevada Attorneys for Criminal Justice. NACJ supports AB 401. Nevada's current record sealing process is Kafkaesque. That's not a figure of speech. It is literally the plot of a novel by Franz Kafka. The trial is about a man who gets charged with a crime and has to go around from agency to agency trying to get the charges taken off his record. Each agency tells him that he has to go talk to someone else, and he spends his entire life fruitlessly trying to navigate the bureaucracy until the book ends with his death. While Nevada's record sealing process does not take a person's entire life, it still requires people to navigate a needlessly confusing set of bureaucracies in order to get any relief. This situation must change. Studying the issue is the first step to fixing it, and so NACJ supports AB 401. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Hoffman. You definitely get the creative award for this morning's testimony. That was very well done. BPS, are there additional callers in support, please?
Yes, there are. Would the caller with the last three digits of 611 slowly state and spell your name for the record? You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Chairman Yeager and members of the Assembly Judiciary Committee. This is John Piro, John-Piro, from the Clark County Public Defender's Office. Record sealing has kind of been a pet project of mine and now Judge Yeager's, but when she was a public defender at our office. Worked on starting a program and figured out all of the difficulties that comes with trying to seal a person's record and get a fresh start. And the legislature has gone a long way towards correcting some of those difficulties in the last two sessions, but there's still a long way to go. So I thank Assemblywoman Nguyen for bringing this bill forward, and I look forward to seeing what recommendations are wrought out of this committee. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Piro. BPS, if there are other callers in support, let's take the next one, please.
All right, we'll now go on to the caller with the last three digits of 318. Slowly state and then spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Chair Yeager and members of the Assembly Judiciary. This is Kendra Birchie, Kendra Bertschy with the Washoe County Public Defender's Office. I also want to thank Chair Nguyen for bringing this incredibly important legislation forward. As we've discussed in several other hearings already in front of this committee this session, record sealing is a significant issue to this state. It's extremely arduous, time-consuming, confusing, costly, and no one seems to have the right answers as to how to fix it. We come back bill after bill, session after session, chipping away, and it's time that we finally study it and figure out how to overhaul this system. I would just note that as a practitioner here in Nevada, as well as previously in California, I assisted in record sealings now in both states, and it's such a different system here in Nevada that's very hard for our citizens. And so we appreciate this bill in order to try to expedite the process when someone has deserved and earned having their record sealed. So thank you so much for your time and attention today.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Bertschy. BPS, are there additional callers in support?
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 401, press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in the queue at this time.
Thank you, BPS. I will close testimony in support. I will now open testimony in opposition. There is not anybody on the Zoom with us in opposition. BPS, could we go back to the phone lines to see if there's anybody there?
To testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 401, press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Once again, to testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 401, press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in the queue at this time.
Thank you, BPS. I will close testimony in opposition. I will now open testimony in the neutral position. We don't have anyone on the Zoom in neutral. BPS, let's go to the phone lines to see if there's anybody there.
To testify in the neutral position on Assembly Bill 401, press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Once again, to testify in the neutral position on Assembly Bill 401, press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in the queue at this time.
Thank you, BPS. I will close neutral testimony. I will now hand it back to Vice Chair Wynn for any concluding remarks on Assembly Bill 401.
Thank you. Rochelle Wynn for the record. I'm going to talk to LCD Legal about a possible amendment to kind of expand that to look at work histories and have the committee also look at that. I appreciate your support on Assembly Bill 401. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair Wynn, for the presentation. I will close Assembly Bill 401. And let's just power through the last bill on the agenda. So I will be presenting that. So I'm going to hand the virtual chair gavel over to Vice Chair Wynn, and I will make my way to the virtual presentation table.
See, we eventually got to it. Today, I will open up the hearing on Assembly Bill 402. This revises provisions relating to public safety. And with that, I will turn it over to Chair Yeager for the presentation.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair Wynn, members of the very hardworking Assembly Judiciary Committee. I am Assemblyman Steve Yeager, representing Assembly District 9 in Southwest Las Vegas. Of course, you all know that by now, but just so the record is clear, I'm pleased to present Assembly Bill 402 to you this morning. Assembly Bill 402 makes some changes to language that was added to law by Assembly Bill 3 of the 32nd special session last summer. So those of you who were here then likely remember that was the so-called social reform, police reform, social justice bill that was passed through the legislature. As we have discussed in this committee on occasion, the word custody can have different meanings when pertaining to law enforcement. There is physical custody when an officer actually has physical control over somebody. The most obvious example of this would be somebody that's in handcuffs, somebody who's in a police car. They're in actual physical control of the officer. But there's also legal custody, when law enforcement might not have physical control over somebody, but the person is not free to leave. In the eyes of the law, that person is in fact in custody. The most obvious example would be when law enforcement is responding to a crime and interviewing folks at the scene about what happened. Although a person might not be in handcuffs, they might not be free to leave, meaning they are in fact in legal custody. One consequence of being in legal custody is that law enforcement is required to give Miranda warnings if they are going to interrogate the person in that circumstance. And those, of course, are the warnings we hear on every TV legal drama all the time. You have the right to remain silent, etc. Assembly Bill 3 of the 32nd special session referenced the word custody in 3 instances, but it did not specify legal versus physical custody. Why did it not do that, you may ask? The honest answer is that special session moved very quickly, and we did the best that we could, but in my estimation, we fell a little bit short of getting that language precise. Because it was a special session, we didn't have the normal opportunity to vet legislation in the Judiciary Committee like we're doing here. Instead, we heard the bill in the Assembly chambers, sitting as a committee of the whole, and the Senate did the same. Since the 32nd special session, I have received feedback that this language could use some clarification. So Assembly Bill 402 seeks to clarify that we are referring to physical custody in 3 instances rather than legal custody. So let me quickly take you through the bill before taking questions. Thankfully, it's not too long, so we'll be able to get through this pretty quickly. Section 1 of the bill pertains to the right to record law enforcement activity. With the amended language, somebody under arrest or in physical custody of the officer would not be permitted to record police activity. This really makes sense because at that point, your actual movement is going to be restricted if you are under arrest or in physical custody. In that instance, the officer doesn't need to accommodate your desire to record. And to be honest, the officer body cameras should be recording at that point anyway. Now, I will note I'm still in some discussions with this language to make sure that we get the meaning just right. But that is the intent, that when someone is in handcuffs, obviously they're not going to be able to record what's happening at that point. Section 2 of the bill, just so you know, it comes with a conceptual amendment that you will find on Nellis. It is a one-sentence conceptual amendment. I am asking that the first instance of the newly added word physical be deleted. So if you're looking at the bill, that is on page 3, line 8. That reference to physical should not be in the bill because the intent of Assembly Bill 3 from the special session was to ban the use of chokeholds. The addition of the word physical in this line suggests that chokeholds are okay until a person is in physical custody, but that was not the intent of Assembly Bill 3. Chokeholds would only be permissible if used in a self-defense situation. So that is the one amendment that I'm requesting. But staying in section 2 of the bill, the addition of the word physical is very important in line 10 because the obligation to place somebody in a rescue position should only apply when the officer actually has the person in physical custody, not just legal custody. Because again, legal custody does not necessarily mean physical custody. So the most common instance of this happening would be when somebody is already in handcuffs and is on the ground or is in the back of a police car. If they indicate they cannot breathe or appear to be in distress, then existing law and this bill would require that law enforcement place them in a rescue position so that people aren't going to unnecessarily suffer harm. Section 3 likewise clarifies that an officer has an obligation to intervene when another officer is using unjustifiable physical force to take someone into physical custody. In this instance, legal custody and physical custody are likely going to be the same thing because an officer generally wouldn't be using force to put someone in legal custody apart from putting them in actual physical custody. So I think it makes sense to add that clarification here just for the consistency's sake of the language in the statute. So that is the bill in front of you. And again, I will note that things are moving very fast in the building. I did not have an opportunity to reach out to all interested parties on this legislation before this morning's hearing. Because of that, I'm very unsure about who we're going to hear from in the testimony of this bill and what concerns may be out there. But I am, of course, as always, willing to work with anybody who has concerns and believes that we can make this legislation better. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. And at this time, I would take any questions.
Thank you. And I am looking around to see if I have any questions. It looks like, any questions? Any questions? Going once? Going twice? Man, you answered everything.
Let me off easy today, committee. That's very nice of you all. Remember that in the future.
And Chair Yeager, do you have anyone on the Zoom that is here to testify in support, neutral, or opposition? I don't see anyone, but.
I do not, Madam Vice Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Broadcast Services, if we could begin testimony in support of Assembly Bill. Why I can't remember names is beyond me. This is Assembly Bill that was
402.
402. Thank you. I remind callers to limit their testimony to 2 minutes and please clearly state and spell your name for the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. To testify in support of Bill 402, press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Once again, to testify in support of Assembly Bill 402, press *9 now to take your place in the queue. And we will begin with the caller with the last 3 digits of 556. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Anne Marie Grant, ANNEMARIEGRANT, Sister Thomas Purdy, asphyxiated to death by Reno Police and Washoe County Sheriff's deputies. First of all, I'd like to thank the committee for sponsoring this bill. I realize the bulk of the bill has been enacted since the special session, which I was grateful for. When your loved one is killed by police policies don't save their lives. Perhaps legislatively mandated directives will encourage common sense be used by officers. My brother was never put into the recovery position by Reno Police after being hogtied. Instead, he was kept face down, hogtied in between 2 police cruisers with an officer's knee on his neck and back area for the entire time Reno PD was at the scene of the pepper mill, filling out their paperwork. I've seen far too many videos of men pleading to officers that they can't breathe, only to be told if you're talking, you're breathing, only for that person, somebody's loved one, to die moments later from the pressure being applied to their body while prone or restrained. Putting someone in the recovery position will keep their airway clear and open. It also ensures that any vomit or fluid won't cause them to choke. Recorded interactions with police by bystanders has often been the only way truth is shed on a particular event that took place. Perhaps if a bystander was filming the police who hogtied my brother, who was non-aggressive, they wouldn't have kept their knees and neck in his back the entire time. Maybe they would have called an ambulance. There was video of him being put in the hogtie, but Peppermill security were there isn't video of that because Peppermill security were fully aware that surveillance cameras do not cover the stairs out front by the waterfront, and so the footage is from the camera across the parking lot, making it grainy. Those who oppose police being filmed will say we already have NRS 289.030 regarding body cameras, but if someone has put in multiple OIS body cam footage requests for victims' families only to be denied, I can attest access to witness recorded footage is much easier for a victim of police to obtain. Private citizens recording police employees during their interactions with the public ensures a level of accountability among the employees of the local department that is often non-existent when cameras are not rolling. Most people who film police intention is not to antagonize, provoke, or interfere with the police. They strive to help end police misconduct, brutality, and abuse of power through direct observation of the police in the
Ms. Grant,
street.
can I go ahead and have you wrap up your testimony?
Yes, if you look on Reno Cop Watch, you will see Officer Christopher A. Good from RPD being filmed by a community member in his less than professional reactions. He killed my brother. He hogtied him, Christopher Good. Thank you.
If we can go to our next caller, Broadcast Services.
We are currently taking testimony in support of Assembly Bill 402. To get into the queue, press star 9 now. Vice Chair, there are no callers in the queue at this time.
Broadcast Services, is there anyone to testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 402?
To testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 402, press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. And we will begin with the caller with the last 3 digits of 196. Slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Madam Vice Chair and members of the committee. I'm Eric Spratley, ERICSPRATLEY, for the Nevada Sheriffs and Chiefs Association. We are here in opposition to AB 402 as presented by Chair Yeager. We signed in neutral, but truly do have concerns for Section 1, as this makes it apply to bystanders at an incident who might truly be suspects once we sort out what we have in front of us. You know, the scenes we go to aren't always super clean and easy to take people and separate them into separate rooms to try to get testimony on something. So we might have a sexual assault victim at a location who might be hesitant to speak with us due to being recorded by the suspect or their friend nearby. And maybe it doesn't rise to interfering or obstructing at the time. But no one's free to leave at that moment. But we might not have a person in physical custody. So we're just trying to sort this out, and maybe some people in the room are got their phones out, recording the cops, recording who's saying what to who, and we can't get a true story from a true victim of something that happened possibly. So that's just one scenario. You can throw 100 different what-ifs at it, but the word physical custody would prohibit us, so we couldn't tell the other person or people nearby to stop recording or do anything about it. We don't really care if people record law enforcement. We're out in the public. We're public servants. That's what we do. But we do care about getting truthful information, and we do care about victims. And Section 1 with the word physical custody is something that we really tried to fight off in AB 3 during that fast and furious special session. And we just would request that you do not add physical to Section 1 of this bill. So we're here in opposition to it for that reason. Thank you, Madam Chair.
We can go to our next caller in opposition.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Would call-in user number 1 please slowly state and spell your name for the record? You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hi, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Chuck Callaway, CALLAWAY, representing the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. We are today strongly opposed to AB 402, the changes being made. We certainly support people's ability to film law enforcement activity, There's cameras everywhere in our society, and as was mentioned, our police officers currently wear body cameras. So that is not a concern. But the concern of removing the word physical, the courts have well established that a person is in custody when they reasonably believe that they don't have the right to leave. And officers often have to detain suspects at crime scenes. They have to take people into custody without necessarily putting them into handcuffs. Just this weekend, I had a fight break out in front of my home involving about 20 people, and I called 911, and the officers that showed up were in a situation where they obviously didn't have enough handcuffs to physically put everyone that was involved in that fight in physical custody. I believe that if we have situations where an officer has to actually put handcuffs on you before they can request that you put a camera down, situations are going to escalate, and it's much more likely that an officer will be harmed or citizens will be harmed. I believe that in many of these cases, when we're dealing with a potential suspect of a crime and they're not actually in handcuffs yet, but the officer is trying to take control of the situation, a reasonable person would believe that they're not free to leave, but having an object in their hands, which could be a phone, could be a weapon, an object that they are sticking in the face of the officer, as many of you might have seen in video footage of some of the protests. There were protesters literally putting a camera in front of the face of an officer and having to physically put someone into handcuffs in order to ask them to stop filming during a detention of that person or custody of that person is only going to escalate situations. Also, this was discussed in detail during AB3 during the special session, where the discussions I had with lawmakers at the time was the intent was to codify case law involving the right to film officers. I actually participated in the testimony on the floor to the committee of a whole and answered numerous questions regarding this statute. So I do believe that there was an opportunity to discuss it in detail in the special session. So thank you, and wanted our opposition to be clear on the record.
Thank you. If we can go to our next caller in opposition of Assembly Bill 402.
To testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 402, press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Vice Chair, there are no callers in the queue at this time.
Thank you. Do we have any callers in neutral on Assembly Bill 402?
To testify in the neutral position on Assembly Bill 402, press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. And we will begin our testimony with the caller with the last 3 digits of 611. Press star 6 to unmute yourself and then slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Chairman Yeager, Vice Chair Nguyen, and members of the Assembly Judiciary Committee. This is John Piro, John-P-I-R-O, from the Clark County Public Defender's Office. We are in neutral on this bill. We were waiting to hear some of the comments before we weighed in, and then when I heard concerning comments from Director Callaway and Mr. Spratley, we decided to come in neutral. It is concerning because Metro has a history of trying to take phones away from people who are trying to record them. So the right to record officers is not as freely given as both Director Callaway and Mr. Spratley would make it seem. So it's concerning that they would even further try to limit the right. And I just wanted to put those concerns on the record for this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Piro. Do we have any other callers in neutral?
To testify in the neutral position on Assembly Bill 402, press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. And we will go to the next caller with the last 3 digits of 318. Slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Vice Chair Nguyen and members of the Assembly Judiciary. This is Kendra Birchie, Kendra-Bertschy, and I'm with the Washoe County Public Defender's Office. Like the Clark County Public Defender's Office, We weren't planning on necessarily testifying today, just need to put some statements on the record. We appreciate all the work that this committee has done regarding this bill, in particular in the special session, with listening to the voices of the community demanding that there be some changes enacted because the community members were afraid of being able to videotape interactions with law enforcement. So we really appreciate the hard work that this committee did to ensure that individuals feel safe to protect each other while interacting with law enforcement on the streets. Unfortunately, this bill is necessary, and these legislation and these matters are needed since not all law enforcement wear body cameras when interacting with the public. There is a law indicating that they should. However, we have seen that there are individuals who are not part of the requirement who are able to then interact and are involved with our community members, and there is no body camera video footage capturing those interactions. So unfortunately, this bill and this legislation is necessary in terms of what was passed during this last session. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Do we have any other callers in neutral?
To testify in the neutral position on Assembly Bill 402, press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Vice Chair, there are no callers in the queue at this time.
Thank you. And at the time, I will turn this back over for any closing remarks to Chair Yeager.
Thank you, Vice Chair Wynn, Steve Yeager, for the record. I thought it would be helpful to add some legal clarity to what we mean when we talk about custody in Assembly Bill 402. After hearing the testimony, perhaps there's not agreement or there's not a desire to do that. I heard a lot of testimony about Section 1, but nobody really addressed Section 2 or 3, so I'm sort of left wondering what the position is on those sections, but I will do my work and find out. And if we get there on this, I'll ask the committee to consider it in work session, and if not, we won't. So thank you so much, committee, for allowing me to present this bill this morning. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, and that concludes my concluding remarks.
Thank you. And with that, I will close testimony and the hearing on Assembly Bill 402 and turn this back over to you, Chair Yeager.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So we have gotten through the 4 bills on our agenda, and I think we did it in record time for Judiciary, an hour and 50 minutes. So good job, committee. That'll take us to our last item on the agenda, which is public comment. Just by way of reminder, we reserve up to 30 minutes of public comment at the end of each meeting. Public commenters will have 2 minutes to provide public comment. Public comment is a time to raise matters of a general nature within the jurisdiction of the Assembly Judiciary Committee. BPS, could we go to the phone lines to see if there's anybody there for public comment this morning?
To provide public comment, press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. And we will begin with the caller with the last 3 digits of 422. Press star 6 to unmute yourself. You'll have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Tiara Moore, and that's TIARA MOORE, and I am the Housing Justice Organizer with Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada. While the CDC extended the eviction moratorium yesterday, there are still thousands of Nevadians at risk of homelessness, being displaced during this time. Without increasing tenant protections, this looming crisis will hurt most of the most vulnerable population, which are renters. These communities have already been disproportionately impacted due to COVID and loss of jobs, loss of security, and it's no fault of their own. It has been a year since Nevada have officially recognized the CDC eviction moratorium and the COVID pandemic. Although our recovery seems closer than ever, we urge you to take steps so that Nevada has a fair, so Nevadians don't fall through the cracks and left behind. You have an opportunity to do so by implementing protections in AB 141 and AB 161. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment, Ms. Moore. BPS, let's take the next caller for public comment.
Thank you, Chair. With a caller with the last three digits of 556, slowly state your name and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Anne Marie Grant, ANNEMARIE GRANT. My brother Thomas Purdy was asphyxiated by Reno police officers Christopher A. Good, David Tallman, Officer Maxwell, and Officer Jorge Aparicio. He was put in a hog tie for 40 minutes and then asphyxiated at the jail by 4 deputies. My brother weighed 140 pounds, soaking wet. As he begged for his life, I'd like to urge you all, it is available online, a video of my brother being asphyxiated to death at the jail. Reno Gazette did an expo. I think it was probably 2 years after my brother died, and 14 other people died at the Washoe County Jail when the local paper decided to do an expose. I'd like to read a couple comments from people who were in custody at the Washoe County Jail. I had a seizure. I was sitting there and I felt it coming, so I started walking towards the group desk, and one of the officers made me stop. And when I said I felt like I was going to seize up, she told me to sit my blank back down and wait for medical. I did, and when they called me over a minute later, I sat down and was leaning on the counter for support, and they asked me questions. Then I had a really long, horrible seizure. I woke up to an officer telling me I was fine. I was fine, knock it off. They gave me a Dixie cup of watered-down Gatorade and sent me back to my seat, where I sat for another 12-plus hours waiting to get released. Then a few hours before I was released, they indeed were making fun of inmates' pictures, calling names. It was horrible. One quite I will never forget was that the blank that monkey slapped her blank boyfriend. It's a horrible place, and I hope to never go back. I have a million things I could say about the 2 times I had spent there, less than 5 days, but it would take all night to write about it. It's just horrible, and the officers don't care about anyone or anything. I'm still traumatized to this day about the things I witnessed. I met a man, a grown man at an event, and he cried, had tears pouring down his eyes. He survived what my brother did not, being piled on by grown men. I just want to say, if law enforcement are opposing a bill, chances are it promotes accountability and transparency. Law enforcement can basically kill without consequence. Please support bills that promote transparency and accountability. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment, Ms. Grant. BPS, are there additional callers for public comment?
Yes, Chair. We'll now go to the caller with the last 3 digits of 196. Slowly state and then spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Eric Spratley, Spratley, here as a private citizen. I'm just kind of taken back that we have experienced lobbyists taking advantage of a less than optimal system for providing testimony to refute comments made by other presenters. They came up in the neutral, quote unquote, position to provide supportive testimony and refute what other people were stating just because they were in opposition. They should know better than that. And they were allowed to continue to do it. And so we're hoping that that this doesn't happen in the future, where this can just turn into a battle of testimonies in the different positions, and it's not stopped. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your public comment, Mr. Spratley. Are there any additional callers for public comment, BPS?
To make public comment, press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, the public comment line is open and working, and there are no more callers in the queue.
Thank you, BPS, as always, for helping us navigate the phone lines. I will close public comment. Anything else from committee members this morning? Assemblyman Wheeler.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to thank the chair for getting us out of here in record time and reminding you that you probably could have heard one of my bills.
Thank you, Assemblyman Wheeler. You all had something to do with getting us out of here in record time as well. So I think it reflects the homework that you've all done on these bills, so I appreciate that. In terms of the rest of the week, 8 o'clock starts every day. We have an agenda for tomorrow and one for Thursday. Thursday, we're going to do a work session as well. We'll probably try to do that first. There are some bills listed on the agenda. There may be some others that we'll add to work session. And then we're still working on Friday's agenda. And again, I anticipate next week, we're probably going to have committee every day at 8 o'clock as we march towards the April 9th first committee passage deadline. And the last thing I want to say today is, Assemblyman Wheeler and I don't always agree, but I think there is something happening later today. There's a sporting event happening that we might agree on, and that is a basketball game between my alma mater and the University of California, Los Angeles. And seeing that Assemblyman Wheeler has connections to the Southern California Trojans, I think he'll be cheering with me later on today. And so let us just say, go blue, and in unison, we'll hope for a victory. I hope everyone has a really great rest of the day. And I should mention, too, that USC is also playing later today. So, Assemblyman Wheeler, best of luck.
Yeah, Gonzaga, it's not going to be an easy one.
Yeah, a very good basketball team. So again, thank you, committee. I hope you enjoy the extra hour in your schedule today because we finished up a little bit early. We'll see you tomorrow morning in this committee at 8 a.m. This meeting is adjourned.